Welcome to Cash is King. This is the place where we break down simple, practical strategies to keep your cash flow strong and your business thriving. Whether you're dealing with collections or just looking to level up your financial game, we've got tips and insights to help you succeed. Let's dive into today's topic.
Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive into another magazine deep dive with us?
Always excited to see what they're talking about this time around.
Right. Getting into all things, well, collections. Legal stuff, tech trends, what's going on in the industry, you name it.
It's a really interesting time for this industry, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And speaking of interesting, something that caught my eye right away was the legal stuff. The CFPB's proposed rule on medical debt credit reporting, big news.
Yeah, that's a hot topic for sure. A lot of people don't realize how different medical debt is. It's not like missing a credit card payment, you know?
Absolutely. So the CFPB wants to limit how much that medical debt impacts your credit score, which on the surface sounds like a good thing.
Right, but ACA International, they're urging caution. They're saying, hold on, this could backfire.
How so?
Well, their argument is that if you just wipe medical debt off credit reports, it might actually harm consumers in the long run. Could make it tougher to get affordable credit down the line.
Interesting. So it's not as simple as it seems.
Nope, not at all. There are always ripple effects.
True enough. Now, before we get too deep into the legal weeds, can we talk about the compliance help desk section? Always a roller coaster of emotions reading that.
I know, right? It's like, am I doing this right?
Exactly. So this month, they're tackling those Glassine envelopes with the little windows. You know, the ones where you can sometimes see what's inside. What's the verdict recipe for disaster?
Well, according to Regulation F, there's no hard and fast rule against it, BUT. The CFPB tends to think that whatever you can see through that window, it's fair game, like it's printed right on the envelope.
So better safe than sorry, right?
Pretty much. Now, proving actual harm from seeing a statement like past due, that's tricky.
True, but I can see how it gets iffy.
Right. And the article did mention some court cases where agencies use those windows with checkboxes, you know, like payment enclosed or need to discuss further. Not exactly subtle.
Oh no, that's just asking for trouble.
Exactly. And that's the thing about compliance. Even if it's not explicitly forbidden, doesn't mean it's a good look.
It's all about being above board, avoiding even the appearance of any shady business.
Exactly. And this is just one tiny detail. Imagine all the other potential pitfalls out there.
Right.
Hence the importance of staying up to date.
Knowledge is power, right? Speaking of which, are you ready to dive into the world of robo-letters and AI?
Hit me with it. Let's get digital.
All right, so first up, these so-called robo-letters that credit repair companies are sending out. What's the deal with those?
Think of it like this. Picture a tidal wave of automated dispute letters, most of them generic and often inaccurate, flooding your desk every single day. It's become a real headache for agencies.
No kidding. Sounds overwhelming.
It is. In fact, at a recent ACA huddle, 90%, you heard that right, 90% of attendees said they're dealing with these robo-letters every single month.
Wow, that's wild. So what's the solution? Hire an army of interns to sift through them.
Nah, I wish it were that easy. The article had some good advice, though. First off, you gotta have a plan, a clear written policy for dealing with these things. Train your team to spot the red flags, barcodes, mismatched return addresses, that kind of thing.
Like a robo-letter battle plan.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to do a little digging. They even suggest reaching out to the consumer to verify if they actually sent the dispute.
Smart. Can separate the real from the fake.
It's all about working smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah,
Especially as more and more communication goes digital.
absolutely. And speaking of digital, let's talk AI. It's everywhere these days.
Like that friend who just discovered avocado toast. Can't stop talking about it. But seriously, it's a big deal, and the collections world, well, they're figuring out how to use it.
So are robot collectors calling people up yet?
Not quite, though I wouldn't rule it out entirely. The article focused on more practical AI tools, like ChatGPT.
Okay, so how does that fit into all of this?
Think of it like this. ChatGPT can help automate some of the more tedious tasks, you know, drafting emails, creating training materials for new hires. It's like having a super efficient intern, minus the coffee breaks.
Sounds like a win-win. But how accurate is it? That's the real question, right?
Right, and that's where responsible implementation comes in. One expert in the article, they said, think of these AI tools like an enthusiastic intern, you know? Eager to help, but maybe prone to some misunderstandings or getting things a little mixed up.
I love that analogy.
Right, so just like you wouldn't let an intern send out an important document without a quick once-over, you gotta double-check the AI's work.
Makes sense. Trust, but verify. Speaking of things that require careful attention, let's talk cybersecurity. This issue had some pretty scary stories about ransomware attacks.
Yeah, those were rough. And the thing is, it's not a matter of if an attack will happen, it's when. Being prepared is absolutely crucial.
Well, you're not going to like this then. Hit me with those horror stories. What happened with Change Healthcare?
Well, back in February, they got hit with a massive ransomware attack. Completely shut them down.
Okay, that's bad, but how bad are we talking?
Estimates are between $1 billion and $1.15 billion in direct costs. And it's not just the money. They had to stop processing claims entirely, caused chaos throughout the whole healthcare system.
All because of, what, someone clicking the wrong link?
It often is something that simple. In Change Healthcare's case, they think the attackers used social engineering tactics, maybe posed as a trusted source to steal login information. It's scary how easy it can be.
Way too easy. And Change Healthcare wasn't the only one, were they?
Nope. MGM Resorts got hit too. Cost them an estimated $8.4 million per day for the 10 days their systems were down.
See, this is why I have nightmares. So how can companies even begin to protect themselves against this kind of thing? It feels like an impossible battle.
It's definitely a challenge, but the magazine stresses that cybersecurity, it's not a one-and-done thing. You need layers of protection, and it's an ongoing process.
So like an onion. Layers of security onions.
Something like that. First and foremost, multi-factor authentication. Everywhere. No exceptions. Passwords just aren't enough anymore.
Got it. Multi-factor check. What else?
You also want to beef up your email security. Think spam filters, antivirus software, the works. It's like having a bouncer for your inbox.
I can get behind that.
Yeah.
Keep the riffraff out.
Exactly. And last, but definitely not least, employee training. You can have the best tech in the world, but if someone falls for a phishing scam, it all goes out the window.
Right. People are often the weakest link. So how often should employees be getting these cybersecurity refreshers?
Honestly, I'd say make it a regular thing, like fire drills. The more you make it part of the company culture, the better.
Couldn't agree more. A little knowledge can go a long way. And speaking of knowledge, it looks like ACA International is really stepping up to help their members with all this.
Yeah, they've really been ramping up their cybersecurity resources, which is great to see.
Like what?
Well, they launched this thing called the Cybersecurity Collective. It's basically a support network specifically for their members.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
So they've got a private LinkedIn group where people can share information and stuff, plus quarterly webinars with experts. They even have a whole library of resources available. It's free for members too, which is pretty awesome.
Not bad at all. Knowledge is power and all that.
Right. They're really hammering home the point that cybersecurity isn't just an IT problem anymore, it's a business imperative.
Absolutely. One data breach and you're toast.
Exactly. Speaking of things that can really disrupt a business, did you see the article about ACA's Convention and Expo?
I did. Sounds like even a global IT meltdown couldn't stop people from showing up.
Talk about dedication, right? That whole CrowdStrike thing really threw a wrench in the works. Flight cancellations, delays, you name it. Some people's travel time increased sixfold.
Sixfold? You're kidding.
Nope. But hey, at least they had some great keynote speakers lined up.
That's true. John O'Leary, the burn survivor, sounds amazing.
Right? His whole message of resilience really resonated with the audience, it seems like.
I bet. Always love a good dose of inspiration. And then there was Debra Fine, the small talk expert. She's a trip.
I know. The article said she had everyone up and practicing their networking skills.
Love it. Networking could be so awkward, especially at these big events.
Tell me about it. But it's so important, especially in this industry.
Couldn't agree more. So, besides the keynotes, what were some of the hot topics at the convention?
Well, unsurprisingly, the CFPB's proposed rule on medical debt was front and center. They had a whole panel dedicated to it.
Makes sense. That's a big deal for a lot of folks in the industry.
For sure. And of course, AI was a hot topic too. One session focused on using it for things like creating script templates and personalizing communication with consumers.
See, it's not all scary robots coming to take our jobs.
Yeah, not yet. Anyway. There was another really interesting session on the rise in Fair Credit Reporting Act cases, too. They're becoming more and more common.
Why is that?
Well, they were saying that a lot of it has to do with the way credit repair companies are advertising on social media, making promises they can't keep, encouraging people to dispute everything, whether it's accurate or not.
The Wild West of social media strikes again.
Exactly. And then on top of that, it's just so easy for people to access their credit reports now. So they're more likely to spot something that seems off and file a dispute, even if it's a simple mistake.
Makes sense. When you make it easier to do something, people tend to do it more.
That's the truth. But anyway, this session was all about giving people practical legal strategies to deal with this influx of lawsuits.
Sounds incredibly valuable. Knowledge is power, after all. Speaking of knowledge, let's talk awards. Who's killing it in the world of collections?
Right. So this year, the Member of the Year award went to Kevin Bache, the Vice President of Business Development for CySci.
Very nice. What did he do to earn such a prestigious honor?
Well, for one thing, he was instrumental in creating the Matching Funds program for ACA's Industry Advancement Fund.
Which is?
So it provides financial support to members who are fighting back against frivolous lawsuits, which can be super expensive.
Oh, wow, that's huge. Those lawsuits can really drain your resources.
Tell me about it. And on top of that, he's been a big advocate for the industry in general, working with their political action committee and all that.
A true champion of the cause.
For sure. And speaking of champions, we can't forget about the inaugural ACPAC Hall of Fame inductions.
Ooh, fancy. Who are the lucky winners?
This year, they inducted Tom Haig, Jim Richards, and Phil Rosenthal, all true pioneers in the industry.
Wow, what a legacy.
Absolutely. And I have to mention that Megan Hebert took home the Speaker of the Year award, too.
That's awesome. What's her specialty?
She's really great at giving practical advice, especially for smaller agencies trying to compete in a tough market.
Love that.
Yeah.
Always got to support the little guy. Any other awards?
One more. Courtney Rayno won the Visionary Award for her work on promoting diversity and inclusion.
Yes. So important, especially these days. It's great to see the industry making strides in that area.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked about cybersecurity, the legal landscape, all the cool stuff happening at the convention, but there's even more to cover. Credit reporting.
Hit me with it. What do we need to know?
Well, they highlight 3 big trends to keep an eye on. First up, remember those Fair Credit Reporting Act lawsuits we were talking about?
Oh yeah, those are becoming a real problem.
Right, and it doesn't look like that's going away anytime soon. In fact, they're calling it a full-blown trend.
Well, that's not good. What's the second trend?
It's the ongoing debate about medical debt and whether it should even be on credit reports in the first place.
Yeah, that's a tough one. There are good arguments on both sides.
Definitely. And to make matters even more complicated, some states are starting to pass their own laws about it. So now you've got this whole state versus federal thing happening.
It's enough to make your head spin.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got lawsuits, we've got medical debt drama. What's trend number 3?
Remember those ROBO letters? Well, they're not just annoying, they're officially a trend that's changing how credit reporting disputes are handled.
It's amazing how quickly something that seems like a minor annoyance can turn into a major headache.
Right, so now you've got more lawsuits, the medical debt debate, and this influx of ROBO letters. It's a lot to keep track of.
It really is. So what's the takeaway for everyone trying to navigate this crazy world of credit reporting?
It's all about staying one step ahead. Stay informed about those legal changes, both at the federal level and the state level, because what works in one state might get you in hot water in another.
It's like a constantly moving target.
Exactly. And don't let up on those cybersecurity measures. We were talking about those phishing emails, right? Well, those ROBO letters, same deal. They can be a way for malware to sneak in.
Right. Stay vigilant, stay informed. Knowledge is power, especially in this business.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of knowledge, have you checked out ACA International's ACA Search Point Library? It's a treasure trove of compliance information.
I've heard good things. What's so special about it?
Well, imagine a compliance encyclopedia, but it's constantly updated. New rules, court decisions, the whole shebang. They actually just revamped a bunch of their documents, including one on medical debt statutes of limitation and interest rates, which can vary a lot from state to state.
It's got to be super helpful with all the scrutiny on medical debt these days.
Exactly. And that's not all they've got. There's this thing called this State Collection Laws and Practices cohort, which sounds really jargony, but it's actually super helpful for keeping up with all those state-specific regulations.
State regulations, don't get me started. It's like every state is speaking a different language.
Right. But this cohort thing, it gives you monthly summaries of new laws, state-specific details, live webinars, and even a dedicated discussion group.
Wait, so you can actually connect with experts and other people in the industry and get advice in real time?
Yep. It's like having a direct line to the collective wisdom of the collections world.
Pretty amazing. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of collections, what's your biggest takeaway from this issue of Collector?
You know, it really feels like the industry is at a crossroads right now. New technologies, new regulations, and consumer expectations are changing faster than ever.
Talk about a whirlwind of change.
Seriously. But it's not all doom and gloom, not even close. This issue also highlights just how resilient and innovative this industry can be. Companies are putting more focus on employee well-being, which is huge for morale and productivity. They're finding creative ways to use AI not to replace humans, but to make things better for everyone. And they're really stepping up and advocating for their interests, making sure their voices are heard.
It's a time of great challenge, but also great opportunity.
Exactly. Those who are willing to adapt, innovate, and never stop learning will be the ones who not only survive, but thrive in this new landscape.
I love that.
Oh,
And that's a great note to end on. This deep dive has been a roller coaster, that's for sure. We've gone from the very human side of collections to the super complicated world of legal and regulatory compliance, with a little AI and cybersecurity thrown in for good measure.
it's never a dull moment in the world of collections, that's for sure.
That's the truth. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.